Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
Good day, grade 9 learners. Welcome to today's Natural Sciences lesson. My name is Sianda Madala, and this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. Now, remember we're in term 1 and we're still exploring life and living. Today's topic is about the human reproduction, and we'll be focusing more on the reproductive system and specifically puberty. Are we together? Now, let's move on to our lesson objectives. Remember, this is what we need to achieve by the end of this lesson. So by the end of this lesson, you should be in a position where you are able to describe the main processes of growth, cell division, maturation, copulation, ejaculation, ovulation, menstruation, fertilization, and also implantation. Also, you should be in a position where you can be able to explain to the next person the importance of the testes, ovaries, and the uterus. And lastly, you need to be able to discuss puberty. And all this information is found under the CAPS document on page 59. Moving on, let's look at our pre-knowledge, right? Which is what we have done in the previous grades and probably the same grade which lays a foundation to today's topic. So in grade 7, we discussed human reproduction. We discussed human reproduction in grade 7 and we highlighted what? Some of the organs that make up the system, right? That make up the human reproductive system. So we said that for males, we have testicles, we have prostate, we have a penis, we have a bladder, we have seminal vesicles, urethra, and also what we call what? A penis and epididymis, right? And also then in females, we highlighted that we have organs that make up the reproductive system of females, such as the vagina, the cervix, the endometrium, the ovaries, and what we call the fallopian tubes, right? So now, let's quickly look at this baseline activity and test ourselves, right? So this is 2 questions, so therefore I'm going to give you 2 minutes to copy down and complete this activity, right? But firstly, let's go through the questions together. Number 1 is saying, why is sexual reproduction important? Then number 2, how long is a female human pregnant for? Right? That's all that you need to answer for our baseline activity. So let's take 2 minutes, then after that, we'll meet for corrections. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's look at the solutions together, right? Number 1 was saying, why is sexual reproduction so important, right? This is the reason. Sexual reproduction is important so that you are able to produce offspring, right? to produce children and to ensure the survival of humans. So you give yourself a tick. Number 2, how long is a female human pregnant for, right? Which is about 40 weeks or 9 months, right? 40 weeks or 9 months. So now going forward, if you want to send in your answers or questions or any comments regarding this lesson, our WhatsApp number is 079 578 2908, right? So now let's continue together now. So now let's look at the important terms that are associated with this lesson. The first one there is copulation. What is this copulation we're talking about here, right? Copulation is the process where the penis is placed into the vagina. Secondly, we have ejaculation, which is the rapid release of semen from the penis. Then we have offspring, right? Which is simply babies or children. Then we have ovulation. And ovulation is the release of a ripe egg from the ovaries. Then we have menstruation. And menstruation is the breakdown of the lining of the uterus. We then have fertilization. And fertilization is the fusion of the egg and the sperm cells. We then have penis, right? Which is the male organ that places sperm inside the female. So now, the reproductive system, right? Which is today's main meal, right? Reproductive system accompanied by puberty. So now, let's start by unpacking system again, right? Remember in our previous topic, we discussed system. We said that a system is different parts that are working together for a specific function, right? And in this case, we mean now different organs that are working together for a specific function. So today we're talking about the human reproductive system. So now it means that we're talking about different parts that come from human beings, right? The male and the female, which bring about offspring, right? They're working together to bring about offspring and to ensure human survival. Are we together? So these are the two human reproductive systems. One for female and one for male. So now when you look at these systems, both of them, they have different parts that are different from each other, but all working together to ensure the survival of humans. Are we together? So now when you look at the female reproductive system, it is different from the one of the male reproductive system, right? It has numerous organs such as the uterus, fallopian tubes, ovaries, the cervix, the endometrium, and the vagina, right? Those are the important parts or the important organs of a female reproductive system. So when you look at the male reproductive system as well, it also has different parts or different organs which work together to ensure the survival of humans, right? To mention some, we have the epididymis, which stores sperm temporarily. We have the penis, we have the urethra, we have the testicle or the testes, we have the prostate, and we have the bladder, for example, right? So now, if you look at these systems, they are both different from each other, and in each and every system, all of those systems, they have what? Different organs in them that are different from each other, but they're all working together to ensure the production of offspring, right? That's what our focus for today is. Talking more about the reproductive systems of the male and the female. So now moving on, right? So the main function of the reproductive system, as I've said, is to produce sex cells, right? Sex cells, which are the sperm and egg cells, right? These sperm, they come from a male human being, right? And the egg cells, they come from what? From a female human being. But now, when these are joined together or fused together, they bring about what? Offspring, and of which we're going to talk more about in the coming slides, right? So now the main function of the reproductive system is to produce sex cells and to ensure the production of offspring, to ensure the survival of human beings, right? So the structures are, for males, it is made up of testes, which produce sperm cells. For females, it is the ovaries that produce egg cells and the uterus where the baby grows or it is nurtured during the gestation or pregnancy period, right? So now, the reproductive system has the main role of producing offspring. I'll keep on emphasizing this, right? So that we know the main purpose of the human reproductive system. Its role is to ensure the production of offspring, right? To ensure that we have survival of human beings, right? To continue the continuation of species, right? Of the human species. So the main role of producing offspring, which we know as children, right? So males are responsible for producing sperm cells, right? So as you have these two reproductive systems for males and females, male are responsible for producing sperm cells, whereas females are responsible for producing egg cells, right? So now, when these egg cells and the sperm cells, they are fused together, we say that a baby is formed, right? A baby is formed, right? Fertilization has taken place, and we're going to have what? A baby growing what? Inside a uterus of a reproductive system of a female. Are we together? So when an egg cell and a sperm cell fuse together, they become what? One cell. They become one cell, and now a baby is formed as a result. So now let's look at the processes that need to take place first before we have babies, and let's look at all the processes that take place inside both reproductive systems, right? So the first one there is copulation, right? Copulation, we say that it is the placing of a hardened penis inside a female vagina, right? So that is copulation, right? When a penis is placed inside a vagina. Then ejaculation takes place in the process, right? Ejaculation is when now the penis releases these sperm cells that are being manufactured from the testes of a male reproductive system. So ejaculation takes place. After ejaculation is taking place, right? In the meanwhile, in the female reproductive system, ovulation is taking place, right? As ovulation is taking place, remember, ovulation is the releasing of the egg cell from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes, right? So now it is the releasing of what? Of the egg cells from the ovaries into our fallopian tubes. So ovulation is taking place meanwhile as well, right? Now, between the two, right, after ovulation has taken place, two things might happen, right? Either menstruation may occur or fertilization may occur. So where's the difference now, right? Menstruation, remember, is there. It's when the uterus lining breaks down, right? The breaking down of the lining of the uterus inside a female reproductive system. So menstruation takes place now if the egg cell that was released from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes is not fertilized, right? So now, let me highlight this, right? Menstruation happens when the egg is not fertilized, right? Meaning the egg did not fuse with the sperm cell. So we will have a result of what? Of the uterus lining breaking down and leaving the body as blood, right? And which we know as period. So now, remember, that is the first thing that may happen, right? But now, if the sperm cell meets or fuses with the egg cell, right? We therefore say that fertilization takes place, right? Fertilization, which is now the fusing or the fusion or the fusing of the egg and sperm cell together to bring about an offspring, right? To bring about an offspring or to become one cell, which will then grow and form a baby, right? So we therefore say the processes are copulation, ejaculation, ovulation, menstruation, which happens only if the egg is not fertilized, and fertilization, which happens when the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell. Are we together? So another process now is implantation. So after fertilization has taken place now, when the sperm cell and the egg cell have fused together to become one cell, we therefore say a baby is formed, right? And implantation now takes place, right? Which is now when you have the egg and the sperm cell sinking into the uterus, right? Preparing for what? Preparing for maturity and growth, right? So after implantation has taken place, therefore we have growth. The baby starts growing in the uterus or what we know as the womb of a female, right? So growth takes place, which is when the fetus grows over a 40-week period or a period of 9 months, known as the gestation period. So now, during that growth, there's cell division taking place, right? Cell division is when now the cells are dividing to form many cells. So remember from our first topic, right? We said that a cell is a basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. So now you have that one cell which divides to form many cells, right? Remember now, when you have a group of cells, you have what we call tissue, right? Then as the cells multiply, the tissues multiply. When you have a group of tissues, you have now an organ, right? When you have a group of organs, you have systems, and a group of systems, you have what? A whole organism. So as cell division is taking place, right? This is when the baby develops organs. This is when the cells divide rapidly to form tissues, tissues forming organs, these organs forming systems, and a whole human being as a person or a baby at the end. Right? So now we say that after that, what occurs? Maturation, right? When the baby becomes fully formed and then is born, right? So now the baby is born from that singular cell or from those two cells, the sperm cell and the egg cell becoming one and dividing again to form many body cells, right? So now the baby is fully matured, and after 9 months or after 40 weeks, the baby is born as a whole organism. So now, moving on, we say that males and females have special structures that help them to produce egg and sperm cells, right? As we have said that females have ovaries and a uterus. The ovaries create eggs, and the uterus is the place where a baby develops, right? Whereas now, when an egg cell and a sperm cell coming from the male figure, right? When an egg cell and a sperm cell they fuse together, which is what we know as fertilization, they become one cell and a baby is formed, right? So here is a picture here to demonstrate the to demonstrate fertilization, right? So now you have now a sperm cell coming in, right? Swimming in the female reproductive system, right? So as it reaches the fallopian tubes, it reaches the egg cell that has been placed or released after ovulation, right? So what happens? The sperm cell meets what? The egg cell, and they fuse together, right? As they fuse together now, as you can see now, they become one cell, right? As they become one cell now, implantation takes place. As implantation takes place, this cell, look carefully, this cell does what? It divides to form two cells, right? This is when now the cell division process takes place, right? The cell division process known as mitosis, right? It starts taking place where you have one cell forming another cell or dividing to form two cells that are identical to each other and the parent cell, right? So these cells, they divide, each and every one of them, they divide rapidly to form many cells, which will result in a human being after 9 months or 40 weeks. Right? So now let's quickly look at the male reproductive system alone. So we said that males have testes which create sperm cells, right? So now this whole part here, right, is the male reproductive system. It ensures the survival of human beings. It ensures the production of offspring, right? So the parts are the males have a scrotum, which is a bag of skin holding the testes in position, right, and regulation of temperature as well. We have the testes, where we find what special hormones such as the testosterone and where sperm cells are manufactured, right? So you have the epididymis, which stores sperm temporarily. You have the vas deferens, we have the urethra, and you have the penis, right? These are all the different parts that ensure that a male person or a male human being is able to give out offspring, is able to ensure the survival of humans, right? So now, the males, they have what? A special organ, which is a penis, which is used during copulation, right? When placing the penis inside a vagina. So as I said now, copulation is when the penis is put inside the vagina, right? So the penis then releases lots of sperm cells into the female, and this is called ejaculation, as we have said in the previous slides. So now, the sperm cells move to the egg cell, and the egg cell is released from the ovaries during ovulation, right? So if the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell, a baby is going to be formed, right? So the fertilized cell divides into many cells by cell division. So it starts now by two cells, right? Two cells, the sperm cell and the egg cell, fusing together to become one cell, which will then divide to become many cells, tissues, organs, and a human being, right? So cell division leads to the cells growing, as I've said. So the fertilized egg cell then moves to the uterus and sinks into the uterus, and this is called implantation. So now, this leads us now to the female reproductive system. Now, looking at the female reproductive system as well, it has different parts that work together to ensure the survival of human beings, right? To ensure the production of offspring, right? So now, we have organs such as the vagina, the cervix, the ovaries, the uterus, and the fallopian tubes. So now we said that the egg cells are produced from the ovaries of a female, right? So in that 28 days cycle, or the menstrual cycle, right? On day 14, ovulation takes place, where an egg cell is released from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes, where it will wait for possible fertilization. Right. How does it wait for fertilization? Remember, for fertilization to take place, there needs to be a fusion of the sperm cell and the egg cell together, right? So now, meaning during copulation, right? During copulation, when the penis is placed inside the vagina, ejaculation takes place, right? Ejaculation being the releasing of the semen-carrying sperm cells, right? So now, if now copulation has taken place and ejaculation has taken place as well, the sperm cells, they swim and reach the egg cell, right? When they reach the egg cell, that's when now fertilization is going to take place and implantation taking place. Therefore, we say that a human being or a female is pregnant, right? But now, on day 14, right, when the egg cell is released from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes and copulation does not take place or fertilization does not take place, what does it mean now, right? This egg, together with the endometrium lining, which is known as the uterus lining, right, here, which thickens during your menstrual cycle, is going to leave the body or the system in the form of blood. So it detaches from the endometrium and it leaves in the form of blood, which we know as periods, right? So it leaves from the uterus and via the vagina to the outside of the body. Now, bear in mind, that's only when fertilization did not take place. But when fertilization has taken place, there's going to be a baby formed, and the menstrual cycle is disturbed to a point where there's no releasing of eggs from day one of implantation up until the end of gestation period or pregnancy period. Right. Therefore, we say that if the sperm cell, as I've said, if the sperm cell does not get to the egg cell, right, then a female has her periods, right? So menstruation occurs when a female bleeds from her vagina, and the sperm cells move to the egg cell, and the egg cells release from the ovaries during ovulation, as I've said, right? So now, moving on, we say that when an egg is implanted, we say that a woman is pregnant, right? So humans are pregnant for 40 weeks or 9 months, which is known as the gestation period. So the baby is born 40 weeks later. While the baby grows, it matures inside the uterus, right? So this is where the baby is nurtured. This is where the baby grows from implantation, from becoming one cell and becoming a whole human being at the end of 40 weeks, right? So now, we have activity 1, right? Your teacher has been talking too much, so it's time to test your knowledge so far, right? We have activity 1. So question 1, or the statement says, read the following statements and say whether each one is true or false. Number 1 is saying a full-term pregnancy is usually 40 weeks. Number 2, it says copulation is the last stage of human reproduction. Number 3 is saying fertilization occurs when the egg cell and sperm cell fuse. Then number 4 says during pregnancy, the ovary releases the egg cell, right? So I'd like you to take about 4 minutes of your time, write down the answers quickly, then after that we meet for corrections. Welcome back, grade 9 learners. Now, before we continue, right, a special thank you and a shout out to the learners from Social Technical High School, right? Your answers were very correct, right? Thank you, and keep on sending those WhatsApp questions, WhatsApp answers, or any comment regarding this lesson. For those who don't know, our WhatsApp number is 079 578 2908, right? We'll be waiting for those questions and answers. Now, let's look at the solutions together. It was saying read the following statements and say whether each one is true or false. Number one, a full-term pregnancy is usually 40 weeks. Is that true or false? The answer is true, right? The answer is true. Number two, copulation is the last stage of human reproduction. Is the statement true or false? That is false, right? It is the first stage of human reproduction. Number three, fertilization occurs when the egg cell and sperm cell fuse. Is the answer true or false? The answer is true, right? Then number four, during pregnancy, the ovary releases the egg cell, right? That answer is false, right? Remember, during pregnancy, there is no releasing of what? Of the egg cell from the ovaries. This is all because of it's facilitated by different hormones from the body, right? From the brain and the female reproductive system as a whole. So now, let's continue together. Puberty, right? Puberty. Why puberty, right? This is all because in order to be able to reproduce, a human being needs to undergo puberty, right? They need to undergo puberty. What is puberty now, right? Puberty is the stage in the human life cycle when the sexual organs mature for reproduction. So that's why we need to discuss puberty today, right? So that we are able to understand how come at a certain age you're not able to bring about offspring. How come at a certain age you develop certain changes in your body, right? This is all because of puberty. So we say that puberty is the stage in the human life cycle when sexual organs mature for reproduction, right? They prepare for before being able to reproduce. So now, sex organs, which are the ovaries and the testes, right? They mature and become ready for sexual reproduction during puberty. And in girls, you find and you notice that puberty starts between at the ages of 8 and 13, right? And that can be different from girl to girl, right? This is because of what? The imbalance in hormones, right? The imbalance in hormones and in different bodies of different human beings, right? So puberty starts between the ages of 8 and 13, mostly in females. Then in boys or males, puberty starts between the ages of 9 and 14. So now what facilitates this puberty, right? It is facilitated by the pituitary gland, right? By the pituitary gland. This one we call it a master gland, right? It is a gland that tells other glands to secrete certain hormones, right? So now this process is initiated by the pituitary gland, which releases hormones into the bloodstream, right? So where do we find this pituitary gland in our bodies? It is found in the brain, right? The pituitary gland is found in the brain, right? Right there at the base of the brain. So this is the gland or the master gland known as the pituitary gland. So this gland releases certain hormones into the bloodstream, and that remember circulation of blood, right, into the bloodstream, and that message will be sent to other glands to secrete desired or certain hormones at that point in time, right? So puberty as well is facilitated by this pituitary gland, right? So meaning what now? The pituitary gland releases these hormones into the bloodstream, triggering the testes, right? Triggering the testes and ovaries to release sex hormones, right? It triggers the testes to release sex hormones, right? And as well as the ovaries as well to release sex hormones. The sex hormones are testosterone and estrogen, right? So now, remember, hormones are chemical messengers. And I'm saying now the pituitary gland is the master gland which secretes hormones into the bloodstream, and the hormones, they tell other glands to secrete certain hormones, right? So the hormone now that is secreted by the pituitary gland is responsible for triggering the testes and the ovaries to release testosterone and estrogen. So the testosterone now is released from the testes in males, right? In males, you find the testes releasing the testosterone and estrogen being released from the ovaries of the females, right? So both these hormones are different from each other, hence they perform different functions for the different bodies, right? So now, when looking at these two structures here, let's remind each other. The female reproductive system, right? Where do we find the ovaries? Yes, right? These are the ovaries. So meaning what? This is where we get our estrogen, right? Our estrogen as a hormone, right? So now looking at the male reproductive system, where do we find the testes? Here, right? These are the testes. And it's easy to associate testes with testosterone, right? Because the names or the first words are the same, right? The first alphabets are the same. So testes, testosterone, right? Ovaries, estrogen. Are we together? So now, the ovaries, they secrete estrogen to be able to enable the female to be ready for reproduction, right? Whereas the testes release testosterone to enable the male to be ready for reproduction. Are we together? Now let's see how. Secondary sexual characteristics, right? So both the testosterone and the estrogen, they bring about the changes that happen in your body, commonly known as the secondary sexual characteristics, right? So in girls, you notice now changes in your bodies, right? In girls, you notice the widening of hips, right? The gaining of weight, starting of periods, right? Which is menstruation, underarm and pubic hair grows, right? Those are the small changes that you start to notice that tell you that now you are undergoing what? Puberty, or the stage of life called puberty, right? And also you may develop some pimples on the face, right? So looking at this, right, it says that the breasts grow from the ages of 8 to 13 usually, and some body growth or gaining of weight, right? Underarm hair, acne, or what you call this, pimples, then the first period or menstruation, and also pubic hair grows, right? This is all around between the ages of 8 to 13, right? And it differs from female to female because of the imbalances in hormones, right? Some they start later, some they start very early, right? So now in males, right, you find or notice the changes being what? Growing taller, the growth of facial hair, underarm and pubic hair growing, and the deepening of the voice, right? Then you notice that now you are undergoing puberty, or you are at a stage called puberty in your life, right? The underarm hair, pubic hair, deepening of voice, and the broadening of shoulders as well, right? So now, as you can see here, right, this picture tells us that at the ages of 11 to 20 years, you have find what? The growth of facial hair, right? 11 to 15, the breaking of the voice, right? Around the ages of 12 years, you start to have an erection on your penis, right? From 12 to 20 years, you have now the growth and muscular appearance, right? And you have the genital growth between the ages of 13 to 16, and also the growth of pubic hair from the ages of 11 to 20, right? The same goes for males as well, right? Some start late, some start very early, right? This is because of the imbalance of the testosterone amongst males, right? Now we have activity 2, right? Activity 2 is for us to test ourselves again, right? So let me read the questions for you. Number 1 is saying, explain the meaning of each of the following: puberty, hormones, pituitary gland. Then number 2, describe how puberty is initiated and controlled by hormones. Then number 3, it says compare the secondary sexual characteristics in females and males, right? So you need to copy and complete the table to write down your answers. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to complete this activity. Then after 5 minutes, we're going to mark together. Welcome back again, grade 9s. Now let's look at the solutions together, right? Number one was saying explain the meaning of each of the following, being puberty, hormones, pituitary gland, right? Number two, describe how puberty is initiated and controlled by hormones. Number three, compare the secondary sexual characteristics in females and males, right? Copy and complete the table for your answers. Now let's look at the solutions together. Number one, right? Number one, puberty. We said that puberty is the stage in the human life cycle when the sexual organs mature for reproduction, right? The stage in the human life cycle when the sexual organs mature for reproduction. Hormones. Hormones, we said that these are chemicals that are made by glands, right? They are chemical messengers. They are made by glands. So they are made to either speed up or slow down the activities of an organ. Then, pituitary gland, right? We said that it is a structure found at the base of the brain which starts to make hormones that instruct an organ and thereby help it perform its functions, right? That's all for number one. Let's move on to number two. Number two, we say that hormones are released from the pituitary gland into the bloodstream and they make sex organs, which are the testes and the ovaries, active, right? They make the sex organs, which are the testes and the ovaries, active, and they are released from the pituitary gland into the bloodstream. So you give yourself 2 ticks. Second explanation, right? We said that sex hormones are produced, right? Sex hormones are produced. Then we say that the testes make testosterone and the ovaries make estrogen. Whereas the testosterone and estrogen they cause changes to happen in the body of males and females, right? Now let's move on to number three. Before that, sorry, we said that these hormones they cause changes such as menstruation, breast development, pubic hair, facial hair, and the deepening of the male voice, right? So let's quickly go to number three. Number three, you had to compare what? The secondary sexual characteristics between female and male during puberty, right? So now the changes that happens to females, the hair begins to grow in armpits and the pubic area, a stronger body smell, pimples may develop on the face, the breasts start to grow and hips become wider, and the ovaries start to make egg cells and menstruation or periods start. Then the changes that happens in males, right? The hair grows on face, armpits, body, and pubic area, a stronger body smell as well. Pimples may develop on the face, and the voice gets deeper and shoulders broaden. Whereas now the penis and the testes grow, where the testes they start to make sperm cells. So now I'm going to give you about 2 minutes quickly to copy down this table and the corrections. Welcome back again, grade 9s. Now we are done and let's summarize what we have learned for today. So today we're talking about the reproductive system, right? And puberty. So let's start again by unpacking system. We said that system, it's different parts working together for a specific function, right? I always give the example of a table, right? Remember that table or your desk that you are sitting on is a system. It has different parts that are working together for you to be able to put your books, to put your bag, to put your arms and so on, right? Those parts are the steel, the nails, and the wood that is on that table. They are all different from one another, but they work together for a specific function, right? So a system in this case, it's different organs performing a certain function together so that you are able to produce offspring, right? Because we're talking about the reproductive system. So now we said that in the reproduction process, there's males and females, right? So we said that males are responsible for producing sperm cells and females are responsible for producing egg cells, right? So when an egg cell and a sperm cell fuse, they become one cell and a baby is formed, right? This is because of what? Of the functions of the two reproductive systems, the male and the female, right? During copulation, the male penis, it ejaculates, right? It releases sperm or semen into the vagina, where that semen now travels up until the uterus and the fallopian tubes of a female to fertilize an egg, right? When the egg is fertilized, it becomes one cell and a baby is formed, then implantation takes place, right? So we say that males and females have special structures that help them to produce egg and sperm cells, right? So females have ovaries and a uterus. The ovaries create eggs and the uterus is the place where a baby develops, right? So yes, the ovaries, they secrete eggs into the fallopian tubes in preparation for possible fertilization, right? After that fertilization has taken place, that baby is going to be nurtured and developed where? On the uterus of the female reproductive system, right? This is where the baby will receive nurturing, right? And will receive growth, right? And maturation. So we say that also males have a penis which is used during copulation, right? And the penis then releases a lot of sperm cells into the female. This is called ejaculation, as I've said. And the sperm cells move to the egg cell, and the egg cell is released from the ovaries during ovulation, right? Now, during ovulation, so there's certain events that take place in a female's reproductive system, right? So now we have a 28-day cycle, which is called a menstrual cycle in a female reproductive system, right? So day 14 of it, which is half of 28, ovulation takes place, right? Where the egg now is released from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes, waiting for possible fertilization, right? So when the sperm now reaches the egg, fertilization occurs, right? But now, when there is no copulation or there is no sperm to fertilize the egg, right? The egg is going to leave the body of the female together with the uterus lining as the form of blood, and that is what we call menstruation or periods, right? So as I've mentioned, this one, if the sperm does not get to the egg cell, then a female has her period, right? And menstruation occurs when a female bleeds from her vagina. So if the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell, it is called fertilization, and the fertilized cell divides into many cells by cell division. Right. You have the sperm cell and the egg cell coming together now to form one cell, right? Which is what we call now, what? Fertilization has taken place, right? And now that embryo is going to divide, right? It's going to divide to form many cells that will lead to tissues being organs, and organs being systems, and those systems becoming a whole baby, right? So as we say, that cell division leads to cells growing. So the fertilized egg cell then moves to the uterus and sinks into the uterus, and that is called implantation, right? So when implantation is taking place, we therefore say that a woman is pregnant. And remember that humans are pregnant for 40 weeks or 9 months, which is called the gestation period. So we said that in order for both males and females to be able to do that, right, they need to undergo a certain stage of their life, which is called puberty, right? Puberty is when now the sex organs are prepared for reproduction, right? So these are some of the secondary sexual characteristics that occur in females during puberty. So during puberty, right? During puberty, between the ages of 8 to 13, you start to have what? The development of breast, right? Or the growth of breast. Then from 9 to 14 years of age, also the body grows and there's some gaining of weight. Therefore, after that, from 10 to 16 years of age, you start developing what? Underarm hair, right? Or hair on your armpits. And also between that 10 to 16 years of age, there's some pimples developing on the face. And also from 10 to 16 years of age, you experience the first period or your first menstruation, right? And between the ages of 8 to 14, the pubic hair grows. Then in males, right? These are the secondary sexual characteristics that develop in males during puberty. From the ages of 11 to 20, you development of facial hair, right? From 11 years to 15 years of age, you start to hear now the breaking of your voice, right? The voice becoming deep. Then around the ages of 12 years, you start to have an erection, right? Then growth and muscular appearance, they start to develop there at the ages of 12 to 20, right? Then also at the ages of 13 to 16, the genitals grow, right? Being your testes and the penis. Then also you have pubic hair growing from the ages of 11 to 20. So now, who can guess what we're going to talk about in the next lesson? In the next lesson, we'll be talking about human reproduction again, but specifically more on the reproductive organs. So I hope you come ready. So from me to you now, thank you and goodbye.